Got a call from the Lettuce King the other day, and he was some upset. Let me tell you about it. Now, most of you already know that GP Transco is a great place for company drivers. But did you also know it's a great place for owner-operators? They have an owner-operator wage calculator on their website where you can punch in what the load pays, the distance, the fuel cost, and figure out exactly how much money you'll be making. Check them out at their website, gptransco.com. The Lettuce King was rolling west in his big ride the other day, and he called me up and he was all upset. He had stopped at a truck stop the night before, and he's got a pretty fancy ride. So when he backs into the back end of the truck stop, just doesn't matter where he parks, he gets a small crowd that comes around and accumulates around the truck just to look at the truck. And it's so fancy, and they have questions for him. And the one young guy had a question for him that just, at first it stumped him, and then it made him mad. And the question was, how do I stay warm at night? And it just threw him. The young driver, just new to the industry, that was asking the question was just a brand new driver for Western Express. And right away, you know there's going to be trouble. But what he's asking, the Lettuce King, is, I called my company up. The truck won't idle. There is no APU on this truck. How do I stay warm at night? And Western Express, a proud card-carrying member of the ATA, their suggestion to him was, well, either buy a heavy blanket or sleep in the driver's lounge at the truck stop. Now, we all know that fuel costs are going through the roof, and we also know that there are certain states that just don't allow idling of trucks at night, and they don't care about whether you've got to stay warm or stay cool or whatever. So yes, there is a cost involved with idling the truck, and there's a legal ramification in some places. But a mega carrier like Western Express, with multiple yards, over 3,000 trucks, and willing to invest in driver assist technology and ELDs and all this other modern stuff, certainly they can more than easily afford to put APUs on their trucks for the comfort of their drivers. Now, we all know that I don't particularly care for the mega carriers, and we also all know that trucking can be a very dirty business. But when you hear a suggestion from a multi-million-dollar corporation like Western Express, their suggestion is that you sleep in the driver's lounge to stay warm, that's just beyond ridiculous. So much of how well your trucking career is going to go is based on whether or not you're on with a good carrier. And you hear me saying that all the time. So what can you do to protect yourself from a situation like this young guy found himself in? Well, my first suggestion is, whenever possible, stay away from the mega carriers, because they've got some of the goofiest ideas to save money that I've ever heard of, and that was one of them right there. But it literally behooves you, when you're in a job interview with a new carrier, you've got to ask the obvious question. When I'm waiting for load or waiting to unload and I've got to wait in the truck, how do I keep myself warm, or how do I keep myself cool if I'm in the desert and it's really hot? This is obviously a question that new drivers need to ask prospective carriers. In this day and age, it is not reasonable to expect a driver to have to sleep in the driver's lounge to stay warm at night. This is not the dark ages. Truck drivers are not second-class citizens, and truck drivers shouldn't be treated any differently than the CEOs of these carriers would want to be treated themselves. Trucking companies have always tried to save money on the backs of their drivers. Years ago, back in the 70s, I was hauling trains through British Columbia with fuel and delivering to different spots. And we got a contract for loads coming out of Calgary, Alberta, into Castlegar, BC. And that trip was about 620 miles. But back in the day, the trucks weren't really strong, they weren't really fast. We were pulling a lot of weight. So it took a lot of time to get up and down these mountains to get into the delivery spot. So at the end of the day, when we got to Castlegar, it was a really long day. So the carrier decided that, and rightly so, that we needed to be put up in hotel rooms, because the trucks didn't even have bunks back then. They shaved all the weight off the trucks to haul as much product as possible. So I did my first load of this stuff into Castlegar, BC, went to the motel that they had paid for me, parked, walked in, checked out the room, and I was totally disgusted. The place was a dump, it was a hole. You could see the bugs crawling around in there. The linen was dirty, and I thought, there's no way I'm staying here. So I went out, laid across the seats of the truck, slept for a little while, then took off and carried on home the next day. The next trip when I went to Castlegar, I finished unloading, I found a really nice hotel, checked in, billed it to the carrier, had a good night's sleep in a clean room, felt rested the next day, back home to Calgary. Well, a few days later, did I ever get a chewing out from the carrier for spending all that money on a nice hotel room. Now these loads paid really well back in the day, and you know, I hated to give the loads up because they paid so well, but there was no way I was sleeping in that flop motel. And I told the owner that, I said, this place is a dump, it's a fire trap, I'm not staying there anymore. If you can't put me up in a better hotel than that, don't send me to Castlegar anymore. He said, well, fine, I won't then. The very next week, a friend of mine that was working at the same carrier delivered into Castlegar, checked into the motel, crawled in to bed with his clothes fully on, thank God, because the sheets were so dirty. Middle of the night, he gets up, he smells smoke, the whole hotel is on fire. Happily, he's already dressed and he runs out across the road to his truck and he's okay. And this motel burns to the ground. And I heard about it the next day, and I was walking through the office and the owner was coming the other way down the hall, and I looked at him and I just kind of smiled and I said, you know, in a quiet breath, I said, I told you that place was a fire trap. Stay safe, keep the rubber side down, demand respect and proper treatment from your carrier, and don't settle for anything less. Stay safe, I'll see you on the backhaul.